Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Today, we're going to be talking about the video game MLB The Show 25. But don't worry, we're not just talking button mashing and graphics. We're going to dig into how baseball's rich history shows up in the game. I sat down with the director of product development, comms, and brand strategy at Sony Interactive's San Diego studio to talk about how they recreate classic stadiums, rate Hall of Famers, and tell the stories of baseball legends. So learn more about how baseball's past gets preserved and played with on today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rounders, a history of baseball in America. I am your host, Jeff Lambert. I've been playing baseball video games since I was a kid, and for almost a decade, it's been one game in particular, MLB The Show. And recently, I've noticed the game has focused more and more on baseball history, from legendary players to parks to pivotal moments that you can even relive. So what goes into that process of recreating those moments? I'm excited to get some insights into that by introducing our guest for today's show, Ramon Russell. Ramon is the Director of Product Development, Comms, and Brand Strategy at PlayStation. Ramon, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us, Jeffrey.
So getting right into it, Ramon, talking about how you come to the decisions to be able to choose what goes into the game every year. Let's talk about this year, the show 25. This year's game has a lot of different features that prominently display historical content more than ever. What was the inspiration for expanding more and more into baseball history in this game?
Well, I think, baseball is very unique because it has such a rich history. And I would argue that it has one of the richest history of all of the sports. And so if that's true, why not dive into it? And because video games are a participatory medium, we have this really amazing opportunity here to educate, enlighten, and inspire by digging into some of that rich history. And that's what we've been trying to do the last few releases.
Can you walk us through, how does your team go through and research and recreate some of these classic teams, the players and the stadiums that you include in each year's release?
Depending on how old the stadium or when the player played, it could be very, very difficult or not as difficult. If it's someone that played not that recently ago, like a Derek Jeter, everything he did was recorded. Everything's in color. The stadium that he played in, we have tons of schematics, we have tons of blueprints, and it's a lot easier to recreate it. But when we start looking back at stadiums like Ebbets Field or an old Negro League stadium, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So we always start with our wonderful partnership with Major League Baseball and the Players Association. And we ask them like, hey, do you have information on this stadium or this individual? And then we'll go to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And then it just goes from there and there. If it's a family member, like for an instance, for Cool Papa Bell or any of our Negro League players, we'll try to get in touch with the family. We'll reach into historical archives. Sometimes we'll be calling libraries in the city. So we look everywhere. And if all else fails, we just pull up Google and start searching on the internet.
Do you find yourself bringing in independent historians and people who have studied the game in addition to working with Major League Baseball to try and get the facts right?
Yes, 100%. And that, the biggest partnership we've had is with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and their president, Bob Kendrick, because we always want to be very, very accurate. Unfortunately, when we're talking about the Negro Leagues, there's not a lot of film and photography that's available in some instances. So we really rely on the museum and Bob and the families to give us as much info as we can. And then sometimes we have to make really hard, educated guesses.
Is there a particular era or feature from baseball's past that has been really challenging to bring into the game authentically? I know you mentioned the Polo Grounds. Any other ones come to mind where it was just a real challenge to put together?
Oh, all of them. Any of the Negro League stadiums, Bruford Field comes to mind. We've had stadiums that we've tried to recreate where we've had 3 photos, and it's kind of hard to have a conversation with a stadium artist. And you're like, well, we only have 3 photos. And he's like, well, there's no photo of the left field wall. We're like, well, we kind of have a photo of the right field wall. So let's make an educated guess, and we have the dimensions. Let's make the left field wall look like the right field wall, and then we kind of cross our fingers and hope we get it right. We have to do that quite a bit, but I think we've been very, very successful at making educated guesses. Because you never want to get anything wrong when you're talking about historical accuracy.
Absolutely. Are there any players that come to mind? You mentioned some of the players from the Negro Leagues where it was really hard to be able to track down the information to be able to recreate those moments properly that you feature in the game.
Oh, that's everybody. Like everything with the Negro Leagues feature has been very, very difficult. But we've had these amazing partnerships with the museum, the families, and MLB helps us out as much as we can. Because in a lot of instances, there may only be three or four photos of an individual. For instance, Turkey Stearns is one of our new Negro League legends this year. There's no imagery of him that we can find that's a video, and there's maybe three to four photos, and they're all in black and white. So that makes it more difficult. And we try to make all of our players, we try to recreate their likenesses when they were in their prime, especially for Negro League players. We don't have photos of him at 25, 26 years old. So it's up to our really, really amazing, talented art team to try to deconstruct what we think he would look like as a younger man. And then always we cross-reference it with the family and they'll have final say like, oh, this does look like my uncle. This does look like my grandfather. In a lot of instances, like skin tones, if it's a black and white photo, we don't know what someone's skin tone is. So if there's a family member, sometimes we'll say, okay, we're just going to use this family member's skin tone. And if they are okay with it, that's how we'll roll.
Wow. So even the families are getting involved on a really cellular level in the development of these features. That's That's great to hear. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about what is the system I've always wondered for going into determining the player ratings for legends. Like you said, there's certain areas of baseball, certain players where we don't have a lot of records. So do stats alone drive the ratings that you assign to historical players? Do reputation and legacy drive into it?
It's D all of the above. For instance, like for King Griffey Jr., it's easy. We just look at stats. For current players, it's easy. We have regular stats and we have all of the advanced stats. Once we start going back further and further in time, it starts to become very, very difficult. And sometimes it is a guessing game. The good news is, Major League Baseball integrated all of the Negro League stats into official stats. Josh Gibson he leads the MLB in batting average, and Turkey Stearns is right there, I think, at number six. So that helps out a lot. But then it's all about research. And then again, it goes to that educated guess. We have an amazing team that works on all of our player ratings. His name is Rory, and he does it with everybody else. And he does a really good job of trying to figure out, okay, by looking at this stat and not having advanced analytics, this is where I think this person probably would have ended up.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
Have there been any internal debates that come to mind about how to rate certain Hall of Famers or players that should be in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Especially when there's not a clear-cut yes or no answer. All the time. We're always having very heated arguments about power, speed, stealing ability, plate vision, all of it.
Has there ever been a time where you've updated a rating based on fan feedback or based on feedback from experts and said, hey, you got this one a little bit off? Has there ever been any retroactive change?
Well, most of the current MLB players always want their ratings to be higher. And it's hard to tell them no. It's hard to tell them no. But what we will always do, we'll always go back and take a secondary look, because we're always trying to be accurate. And luckily for current players, there is so much data out there. It makes our job a little bit easier. And Rory and the team is always looking to make sure we can get everything as right as we can be. But we don't always get it wrong, but get it right because it is, in fact, a video game.
For sure. And especially with the historical aspect, you may not have the players there to be able to talk to themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Or we don't have the stats, or like maybe we're putting somebody in the game where we only have maybe 30 actual box scores, but they played 300 or 400 games. And so we're trying to extrapolate. If we only have 30 box scores, but they played, 300 or 400 games, like what does that look like? Do we project them out? Do we lower them? So it's always a little bit of an educated guessing game.
How do you decide which historical players to spotlight every year?
It's not a science. We'll look at positional diversity, where we're light in previous years in a position. So let's say this year Carlos Beltran, Cool Papa Bell, Norman Turkey Stearns were some of the legends that we wanted to include. Well, if they're all position players, then we're like, okay, the next three or four legends should probably need to be pitchers. And we're always trying to have some positional diversity, some diversity of players and when they played, when they retired. So it's always a sweet science, as they say. We're always trying to get it right.
Is there a piece of baseball history, like a forgotten team or a player or a ballpark, that you have on your list to include that you haven't yet?
A lot. I don't want to give specifics because that would spoil maybe what we'll do in the future. But there is, baseball has such a storied history. There are so many stories we have yet to tell. Even though we've started telling stories about current players and players that are in the Hall of Fame that are still alive, and we spent the last 3 years diving into the Negro Leagues aspect of baseball, we still have so many more players to talk about. There's also Latin America's influence on baseball. We've yet to really dive into that. We've just scratched the surface of women's contributions in baseball. We added being able to create a female enrolled to the show last year. Last year, we also introduced Tony Stone, but we still have some other Negro League women that we need to talk about. We have some other women that were really, really important to the story of baseball that we need to talk about. So the world's kind of our oyster, and so there's a ton of content that we can dive into, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in the future.
Just to pivot off a little bit, there was the announcement recently, I think last week, about the creation of a women's professional baseball league that was going to go live in 2026. Do you foresee us getting to the point where the show would feature different leagues besides the MLB to be able to give the experience of different genders or different countries?
I'd certainly hope so. I mean, anything that's happening in real life, we want to replicate because we are an officially licensed Major League Baseball game. So 100%.
Very good. What role do fans have with suggestions or feedback? What role do they play in shaping the historical content that you bring to the game? You talked about historians, partnerships with the MLB, the Baseball Hall of Fame. Did the fans get any input into this?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Fans are very good at letting you know what they like, but they're very, very good at letting you know what they don't like. So they help us out in a tremendous amount of ways, and we really value their feedback. They screamed for us to add Josh Gibson to the game last year, so we did. Last year, they also screamed, "Hey, next year, like we need to see Cool Papa Bell." Cool Papa Bell's in the game. They were asking for Carlos Beltran to come back. He's came back. They've were very, very, very loud about a certain aspect of a very popular mode that maybe we might have messed up a little bit. And this year we fixed it. And that was a lot based off of consumer feedback. So there's always this balance of what we've learned from like telemetry data and looking at how the people play the game, from looking at stats. And then there's the consumer feedback. And then there's also what the dev team wants to do. And so what we're always trying to do, and it's not an exact science, is figure out with these limited amount of resources that we have, because we're a yearly title, we can't make everybody happy. So what can we do that's really impactful, that will stretch out the furthest and make the most of our fans happy?
What do you hope, you and the team at Sony hope that players are taking away from being able to recreate and relive these historical moments in the video game?
It's baseball is a sport about failure. And I think it's really difficult to make a video game that's about failure because baseball is a sport of failure and it's the ultimate team sport. And so anytime we can showcase that in a fun way, we try to do it. Baseball has such a rich history that's really tied into American history. So that's why finally integrating the Negro Leagues into the game was such a big deal for us. So we're always trying to do it, but do it in a way that works for a participatory medium in a video game. Because at the end of the day, kids and grown-ups, they're picking up the controller because they want to hit strikeouts and hit home runs. So we have to find that right balance there.
What do your internal metrics tell you about play usage of the historical aspects, the legends options? Are people taking to those? Has it become a popular feature in the game?
Yes, 100%. It's been like one of our most highly tested modes. The numbers have been off the chart for everybody who's ever engaged in the mode, and that makes us very, very happy. But it's not for everyone. We have some players that only play Road to the Show. We have some players that will buy the game and they will play one game in franchise mode every day until the next game comes out, and they won't touch anything else. And then we have some other fans that only play Diamond Dynasty. So it behooves us to try to improve the game in all areas every single year to make everybody happy.
Now, for you, Ramon, if you could add one time travel scenario to the game, any two teams from any era squaring off,
Ooh.
who's playing and what's it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would love to see any of that historic Yankee squad um, against last year's Dodgers team. I'd like to see that. Or any of those. Yeah, it would be insane. Or any of the teams, any of the Boston teams with David Ortiz that won the World Series against last year's Dodgers team, because both of those teams are just so stacked, and the game's a little bit different now. I think it would be really interesting to see how it shaked out, especially with how dominant pitching was back then. You know, you didn't get pulled in the fifth and sixth inning, like you do now. Like pitchers were going deep into the games, especially into the playoffs. So I would love to see that.
Great points. Ramon, thank you for coming on the show. Folks, MLB The Show is live now. Go pick up a copy if you haven't already. What are you doing if you haven't? Ramon, thanks for taking the time to come on the show to discuss this year's game.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode as we explored another amazing moment from baseball history. You can help grow the show by liking us on YouTube and your podcast app of choice. Don't forget to head on over and sign up for the free email newsletter and the bonus show, This Week in Baseball History. Just go to www.rounders.substack.com. A special thanks to our premium subscribers that are helping us grow for just $1.25 a week, and to our starting 9 supporters, Nathan Halverson and Jack Wilson. You are the producers helping make this the top baseball history show out there. See you next week, and remember, there are only 2 seasons, winter and baseball.